Free agency is here. The winter meetings are basically around the corner. There are reports that Shohei Ohtani could even sign before the winter meetings in early December. So you've got a lot of mailbag questions, and I've got answers next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself like I did when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat over 50 infections. Get yours today at Jace Medical. That's Jase medical.com. And coming up on today's show, yes, it is another mailbag edition of the show because we have so many great questions still left over, and not a lot happens this time of year. Like, one of my favorite things that we do this time of year is kind of look at free agent contract predictions and, discuss which of those might make sense for the Giants. And so jumping right in, the first mailbag question that we have tonight comes from Isaiah, who says, top 5 free agents Giants should target. And, I basically just want to say, who are the top 5 free agents? And that's who they should target. I wonder if you kind of mean like realistically, like if you're not going to realistically land each of the top 5 guys. But to me, there's just no doubt the clear number one free agent the Giants should target is Shohei Ohtani. And there's no reason that they won't. They went after Aaron Judge. They went after Carlos Correa. They essentially put the money on the table that was enough to get both players. And they ended up with neither, of course. But this year, Shohei Ohtani is out there, and the Giants are going to go after him. I mean, John Shea of the San Francisco Chronicle writing a piece recently saying that the Giants are initiating a full court press on Shohei Ohtani. And so I think a lot of us are like kind of jaded and extremely skeptical about their probability of actually getting the deal done. But when you ask should pursue, I just think there's no question the number one player is Shohei Ohtani, and there's just no reason why. Basically, he's going to get to pick where he wants to play. And I think the Giants will do what it takes to make an offer that's compelling, just like they did with Judge and just like they did with Correa. And it'll ultimately be just up to Ohtani where he wants to play. And the last 2 years being subpar or par and then subpar doesn't help the Giants. And so that's unfortunate and a failure. And it may have an impact. Anyway. So the number 2 guy, I think I'm going to go Yoshinobu Yamamoto here, who's a starting pitcher out of Japan. And the reason why is, and again, a lot of people have him as the number 2 free agent. And so if you get Ohtani, do I see you also getting Yamamoto? Probably not, because there's a lot of good starting pitchers out there, and you could kind of drop down a tier, because that would be a lot of money you would be committing to Ohtani if you somehow found a way to get him. But Yamamoto is probably the next best player in this class. He's 25 years old. That's like one of the keys here, and he's just been the best pitcher in Japan for years. And the Giants, when I think of their starting rotation, I think of think of what happened last year with Logan Webb and Alex Cobb, and then just no clarity after that. And so if you can add like another guy who's a frontline type of guy, and it's not a Carlos Rodon situation where it's like, if he's good, he's going to be gone. Like for Yamamoto, this is going to take very much a multi-year deal. And, the prediction by ESPN's Kylie McDaniel, who I like a lot, is 7 years, $212 million, which would be the biggest free agent contract for a starting pitcher since Garrett Cole many years ago. And so that's crazy. But a big part of it is that he's 25 years old. And the Giants are apparently very in on this guy as well. But yeah, like I'll continue discussing this, but just starting pitching, someone to pair with Logan Webb at the top, I think would go a long way. But the next player, I'm gonna throw a curveball here and go position player, and I'm gonna say that it's Cody Bellinger. And the reason it's Cody Bellinger is there's just too much upside to dream on for me, because this guy won an MVP award at age like 23. He was looking like one of the best young players in the game. Like it was, he definitely was one of the best young players in the game. He's still only 28. He was born in 1995. And yeah, the dude in 2019, not that long ago, he had 47 home runs as a 23-year-old, hitting 305, 406 on base, 629 slugging. My eyes are popping out of my head just looking at these numbers. But then, as I have read, like when it's put this way, it's alarming. In his next 1,143 plate appearances, which is a lot, it's like very much 2 full seasons worth, he has a 70, excuse me, I meant to count this year as well, because this year was a rebound year. But so that's 1,699 plate appearances since. He has a 97 weighted runs created plus, meaning he's been a tick or 3 below average offensively since that MVP season. However, the big caveat is he dislocated his shoulder and required, I think, surgery on it in the 2020 postseason. And then in 2021 and in 2022, he was bad. But then this year, in 2023, he rebounded and he went back to not like MVP form, but like really good player form. And so the Giants need a center fielder. Like just imagining the potential of this guy in the middle of their order, I don't think that that's all that they need offensively. I think they need more than just a Cody Bellinger. The original MLB Trade Rumors contract prediction I thought was just out of control, and I was like, never mind on my interest in Cody Bellinger. It was like 12 years, $250 million. I just could not believe that prediction. But Kylie McDaniel here at ESPN comes in with one that I think is far more reasonable at 7 years, $147 million. So it's similar average annual value, but 5 fewer years. And I think that makes more sense and is more realistic, and I like him there. And so beyond that, there's just this next tier of like starting pitchers to choose from, talking about Blake Snell, although I keep saying I'm not sure he's the kind of guy they want to target because he walks a lot of guys, and they really are, the Giants don't walk a lot of guys. Aaron Nola, Jordan Montgomery, I'd probably kind of stay away from a little bit. I do like the potential fit of Matt Chapman, upgrading and stabilizing third base a little bit more. Sonny Gray comes to mind. So I'm gonna say like Chapman and Jung-hoo Lee. Like if you can't get Cody Bellinger, I think you get one of those two. If you're talking about upgrading in center field. You could get a guy like Kevin Kiermaier or something, but that's just defense. But the Giants need offense and they need defense. So that's essentially my list. I'm sure I named maybe even more than 5 guys there, but that's who I think they should target. But what about who will they acquire? What is my prediction about who the Giants will acquire? We will get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. You and I, we spend a lot of time talking together, especially if you're an everydayer. We get fired up together on wins, fired up on losses, and who starts, who sits, when they have an opener, when they don't. I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today, though, I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. Whether you're on extended travel, like I am going to be, this time next week, you're going to see me with a totally different background. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're bracing for another major weather event or limited by yet another supply shortage, you're covered. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics like Cialis or for Cialis, Viagra, and Revadio prescriptions. Right now at jacemedical.com, go there to receive your 12-month supply of your daily medication. 12-month supply. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. If you use, if you or someone you love would get peace of mind having a year supply of a daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. All right, as promised, we are going to get into more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow it's already the deadline to protect players from the Rule 5 draft. And so the fact that I've been having to do these episodes in the evening means that the Giants will have made their determinations on who, if anyone, to protect from the Rule 5 draft. These are players who have been in their minor league system for a number of years but are not yet on the 40-man. So it is a big deal because prospects, sometimes top prospects, get added to the 40-man roster. It's a pretty big deal, and you see guys around the league who don't get added, and it kind of spurs some action. And so we're going to be breaking that down tomorrow, as well as continuing to go through these top free agent lists and seeing who's a fit for the Giants. And also we've got all these mailbag questions as well. And then the non-tender deadline is coming up too, so we're going to be previewing that and the Giants' 6 arbitration eligible players. Next question, though, comes from Jack, who says, who do you predict they'll acquire this offseason? Jack says, I've got Hoskins and Gray. And man, Jack, you have listed guys who, if that was their offseason, we would be, the fans would not be happy. The fans would not be happy with Rhys Hoskins and Sonny Gray. But you've also managed to name like 2 guys who just scream like Giants signings in a way, in that they're solid but not spectacular. Sonny Gray, I think, is coming off a really good year, but he is a little bit older. I think he's like 34 years old. But, they signed Alex Cobb when he was quite a bit older, and that didn't deter them. But Farhan Zaidi has talked about, this is what I'm saying. Like, if you get a Shohei Ohtani, then yeah, like shop at the Sonny Gray category or bucket or whatever. But if you don't, then you need to aim higher. And that's when I say Yamamoto and I say Snell and I say Nola and some other guys. I don't know. Gray's kind of up there too, though, for me. But anyway, you didn't ask me to break down your prediction. It was my prediction you asked for, and I say, what the heck? What the heck? And why don't I just go on the record and predict Shohei Ohtani to the San Francisco Giants? It makes a ton of sense from the Giants' perspective. Like I said, it ultimately comes down to where does he want to be? And that old, I feel like in my head, I immediately hear people saying, why would he want to play for Gabe Kapler and his platoon system and blah, blah, blah. But it's not Gabe Kapler. It's Bob Melvin. It's a different kind of time in San Francisco. But then you might say, well, the team hasn't been very good. Shohei Ohtani is good enough to take a 500 team and make them close to a 90-win team when he's pitching. So he's not going to be pitching next year. So that definitely takes several wins out of his value. But they would do more. Like I said, you could still like get a Sonny Gray and who, fill in some other pieces. It's not like, even if you're giving out a $500 million plus contract, it's just about how much are you paying per year, not the total sum. I mean, anyway, so I'm just like, they're due. They're long overdue. They were due last offseason, and they got someone to agree to come to the team, and then it fell apart anyway. So I'm just going to predict in general here that they end up with a top free agent. And I've said this before. I was kind of right. They did agree to turn. Clearly, they're out there trying, right? And I just think this offseason is no different. There's a shorter supply of top talent, but either Ohtani or Yamamoto or Bellinger, one of those three. How about that's my kind of hot take, is one of those three is coming to the Giants. And if not Bellinger, then Jung-hoo Lee, I'll predict. And beyond that, I mean, Matt Chapman, there's just like, it makes sense in a lot of ways. It also doesn't make sense in some ways. I'm torn on Matt Chapman, but I don't know. What have you got? Shohei Ohtani, Cody Bellinger. That I'm going a little haywire here. Shohei Ohtani, Sonny Gray, Jung-hoo Lee, and Matt Chapman. Something like that. I mean, talk about revamping the middle of your lineup with Ohtani and Chapman to go along with like Conforto and Haniger and Yastrzemski and Tyro. Suddenly it would get pretty interesting. As long as if you throw Ohtani into that mix, and trades are also on the table as well, of course. But I don't know. I'm aiming big. And some of I just don't see them making those kind of depth additions, and it's just not a very good free agent class. So I don't know. Rhys Hoskins, he does make a lot of sense. The problem is defense. He's never been a good defender, and they kind of are already taking up a lot of their DH spots potentially, unless they trade somebody, because Conforto and Haniger looks like are headed for kind of regular or at least semi-regular DH roles because they want to add an outfielder, and you've already got Conforto and Haniger and Slater and Yastrzemski and Matos and Meckler, and you're trying to add somebody else. So the DH spot is not open. But if you get Ohtani, it's really not open. That's like all he's going to do next year. So anyway, the prediction I want to make is they end up with one of those top three: Ohtani, Yamamoto, or Bellinger. There you go. You heard it here first. Next question comes from X, who says, what type of offensive players should the Giants be looking for? Should we look for more power, or rather someone who can hit for contact and get on base? And so I'm actually of the philosophy that it doesn't really matter. Like when I talk about a number like weighted runs created plus, like there's a bunch of ways to do it. You could be Luis Ariz, who just never strikes out and hits for an extremely high batting average, doesn't walk a ton, but the on base is great because when you're hitting whatever, like 350, if you walk just a little bit, your on base percentage is going to be like 380, which is great. But then not a lot of power. But the overall weighted runs created plus just says like how good are you offensively at like run creation compared to the league average. And for him, he was at 132 last year. So that's really good. 32% above average. But according to this metric, of course, it's not, precise. But then I'm just going to look at some other players who are around 132 and just demonstrate that there are really different ways to do it. Cody Bellinger, very different type of player. I mean, he actually cut his strikeout rate dramatically last year, but Luis Robert of the Chicago White Sox, 38 homers, 264 average compared to 354 for Arise. Like I said, 38 homers compared to 10 for Arise. So, like, overall, in like conceptually, theoretically, they were like similar in terms of per plate appearance. How much do they contribute to run scoring? They just do it in different ways. And so when you say like what type of player should they be targeting from an offensive standpoint, because if we're talking about defense as well, then they need people who can play defense too. But what type of offensive players? So I don't really look at it that way personally, honestly. But if I had to say something, I would just say I want to see less swing and miss. I want to see less striking out. More contact, like ideally, but I'm not saying like they're and like sacrifice power to get more contact. Ideally, the perfect player is someone who makes a ton of contact and hits for power and has a good eye, But it's hard to find that. That's like where your superstars come from. Like even Ohtani, he chases and he swings and misses a lot, but he's still like the best offensive player in the game because of when he hits the ball, he just crushes it so often. So, but I would like to see, that's why I say Jung-hoo Lee, like this guy's setting records in Korea. I mean, just minuscule strikeout rates, like 5%. And so someone like that, just a different element to this team that's been kind of one-dimensional. Speed as a offensive dimension, like stolen bases, taking extra bases, stuff like that, as opposed to just like stationary power hitters, I think makes a lot of sense. So coming up in just a minute, more questions and answers, including what positions on the field do the Giants need to upgrade this offseason to get back to the playoffs? We will answer that question in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, the Giants will have made some moves probably to protect some players from the Rule 5 draft. These are guys who may be top prospects for them. They're not yet on the 40-man, but they have to be added to the 40-man in order to be protected from being taken by another team in the Rule 5 draft, just like how the Giants got Blake Sable. That's how they got him. The Pirates didn't protect him. The Reds actually took him in the Rule 5 draft, and then the Giants immediately traded for him. But anyway, more about that and any other rumors. We still don't know the full coaching staff, so a lot to get into for sure tomorrow, and be sure to check it out. The next question comes from Mike Yastrzemski Enjoyer, who says, what positions do the Giants need to upgrade this offseason to get back to the playoffs? To improve those positions, what players do you think the Giants should sign/trade for? So I'm going to, again, start like a little bit with where I initially started today, which is saying that I think that there's an obvious need for starting pitching. Yes, you've got Logan Webb. It's a great place to start. Alex Cobb, though, right away, yes, they picked up his club option, but he had hip surgery that is taking him out for a long time. And so I wouldn't like bank on 150 innings from Alex Cobb. Like maybe you get 120 and live with it. So after that, though, it's also like Ross Stripling and, I mean, thankfully the Alex Wood and, Sean Manaea opted out. So who do they got? Who do they even have? Like, okay, Anthony DeSclafani. That was the name I was forgetting. So you're kind of stuck with Ross Stripling and Anthony DeSclafani. But then you've got intriguing youngsters like Kyle Harrison, Keaton Wynn, Tristan Beck, and others on the way. Alex Cobb, of course, in there as well, but going to start the season on the IL. I just really think that adding an impact front of the rotation arm when there's a free agent class like this where that is totally the strength of this free agent class. And I'm not just nationally, but internationally, with Yoshinobu Yamamoto potentially being the second best player in the class, despite the fact that he's never played in the major leagues. And a 25-year-old kind of impact ace starting pitcher from Japan to pair with Logan Webb would be pretty exciting. And so I'm going like with him. I also like, I would not complain about the Giants signing Aaron Nola or Blake Snell, although I do have some concerns about both of those guys. But it just goes on and on. There's so many talented starters. Eduardo Rodriguez and I'm forgetting. I was just thinking of somebody, and I'm Jordan Montgomery, for example, Marcus Stroman, Sonny Gray, like I said earlier. So there are a lot of options, and I think that's number one. But then they also really need to improve overall offensively, whether it's like one extreme impact addition like Shohei Ohtani. That would be the DH spot technically, but I don't care. Like, I'm not saying like, yes, the DH spot is where you have to upgrade. If we're actually talking positions on the field, I think that I'm not so comfortable with JD Davis at third as just like he's an everyday player. I think that signing a Matt Chapman or something like that, or making a trade for a third baseman, center field. I mean, they've talked openly about a need in center field. I also think they need some insurance at shortstop for Marco Luciano, because you don't like, what if he struggles? What is the backup plan? There's really not great options. And so I feel like they need not just somebody like a Paul DeJong who's going to give you like maybe okay play, but someone like I was a big fan of the Giants targeting Tommy Edman at the trade deadline. Of course, they did basically nothing at the trade deadline, but Tommy Edman, the Cardinals need pitching, and the Giants have young pitching. When I said Tristan Beck, Keaton Winn, guys like that. Tommy Edman is versatile, good defensively everywhere he plays. That type of contact player. And when I say everywhere he plays, he can play short, he can play center. Someone who's versatile like that allows them to have insurance at a position like shortstop, because it's like, okay, Luciano's struggling. Tommy Edman, you're moving to shortstop, so that versatility is really key. And Edman went to Stanford, so familiarity with the area. So I like him, but center field in general, Bellinger, Jung-hoo Lee, kind of jammed at the corners. If you do make an upgrade in center, you've got so many guys, and I think their bullpen is pretty strong, but could be shored up, I'm sure. But Camilo Doval is about as good as it gets at the back end. I don't love like the first base situation is a little bit platoon heavy, and it wouldn't hurt to have just like a big thumper in the middle of your lineup at first base. But they just need to add some everyday players and some good ones, not complimentary fine players, but some good everyday players. And so in terms of they're pretty flexible in terms of what position it could be. I don't know that, like, because they have guys who can move around, and if you get like a first baseman, then what do you do though with Lamont Wade and whoever, like Wilmer Flores? I think that actually that's a pretty solid group going into the year at first base, because Flores played so well this year. So that's one of the reasons Hoskins kind of falls off my radar a little bit, because not good defensively. Flores is actually solid defensively as a first baseman, but not anywhere else. Wade is solid enough defensively there. So I feel like third base, starting pitcher, center field, that's where I'm going. And shortstop insurance, like with a legitimate insurance policy, because you can't afford for Luciano to just kind of really struggle, have to send him down, and then get stuck in a position where, I don't know, you have to move Tyro there where he's playing out of position, and then what do you do at second in that situation? So probably put Flores there, and he's not great. So it's this ripple effect. And so I think they, like a versatile guy like Tommy Edman really would make sense. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day, everydayers. Rule 5 Protection Day tomorrow, previewing arbitration, non-tender, tender candidates and all that. And more of these top 50 lists. I want to average them all together and come up with some of the contracts I think make the most sense, predicted contracts, I should say, for the Giants. So stay tuned for all of that. More mailbag questions, any news, the coaching staff. We still don't know. We don't know who the pitching coach is. So all of that's going to come out in the coming days, I would imagine. And then we're getting closer and closer to the winter meetings where stuff really happens. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked on Giants.